In the summer of 2016, a physicist walked up the slope of a mesa in northeastern Utah and felt the ground shift beneath him. His name was Erik Bard. He had come to a place he did not believe in, a ranch that had been called Skinwalker for decades, tucked into the Uinta Basin, hidden by legend and high desert. He was a man of instruments, X-ray physics, engineering, the careful work of reading what machines will tell you. Nothing in his professional life had prepared him for the ranch, and he would have told you so himself. Years earlier, in the early 1990s, Bard had first heard mention of Skinwalker Ranch, and like most people with a scientific frame of mind, he filed it away in the category of folklore, a mashup of every paranormal theme you could name, stitched together into a story too strange to be true. Shapeshifters, cattle mutilations, lights in the sky. He was a skeptic long before he was an investigator, and he wore that skepticism like a suit of armor. Then, in 2016, the ranch's owner, Brandon Fugal, invited him to come and look. Fugal was a man of property and business, not a man given to fantasy, and he wanted someone who could think in measurements. Bard said yes. He came expecting to spend a few days explaining the unexplained away. The Mesa changed that. On his first approach, standing on the rocky slope, his phone screen flickered. Not low battery, not a dropped call, a screen stuttering, as if something in the air itself was interfering with the machine in his hand. He noted it, filed it, and moved on. But back at the homestead, things grew stranger. He lost his balance, standing on a level floor, while other people in the room reported the same sensation. The ground spinning, the room tilting, nothing visible causing it. His first hypothesis was practical. Perhaps the ranch sat in a weak cellular zone, and his phone, searching hard for a signal, was pushing extra transmitter energy into the handset, causing the glitch. It was a clean, scientific explanation. It failed. He set up the test, reproduced the conditions, and the glitch would not come back on command. So he designed a decisive experiment. He took a rare earth magnet, a piece of machinery capable of lifting 1,750 pounds of iron, and placed his phone beside it. The phone glitched again, on command this time. That was the beginning, he would later say, of trying to put a physics interpretation on some part of the phenomenon. The ranch, he concluded quietly, carries an unusual electromagnetic field, which raises the question this story will spend a long time circling. What generates a field like that? And why does it seem strongest near the Mesa? The Mesa is the first character in this story, and it deserves to be understood as one. It rises from the floor of the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah, a broken fist of stone and scrub standing above a landscape that has been called many things over the centuries. Sacred ground, cursed ground, a doorway. The ranch itself is spread over 512 acres of high desert, but the history beneath it is far older than any deed or fence line. On the face of the mesa, carved into the rock, there is a petroglyph that researchers have studied carefully. It depicts what appears to be a star map, a chart of the night sky featuring the constellation Draco, the serpent. An anthropologist who examined it reported that local tribes regarded this image as nothing less than a portal to the heavens, a place where the sky came down to meet the earth, and where things out of the ordinary were expected to pass through. That tradition did not die with the first surveyors. A retired Navajo ranger named Jonathan Dover has spoken about this region with the authority of someone whose people watched these mesas long before any ranch existed. In the old knowledge, he has explained, The idea that unidentified objects enter mesas is not a modern theory. It is part of the oral tradition of this land, passed down across generations. The mesas here were never just rock. They were seen as places of passage. Near the mesa stands Homestead 2, the ruin of a 19th century settlement. Its walls are crumbling now, but the stories around them have not faded. Locals and visitors alike have long claimed that strange creatures emerged from the ground near that homestead at night. Figures that did not belong to any animal anyone could name. Whether those reports are memory, myth, or something else, they were recorded long before the cameras arrived. And the cameras themselves, the instruments, tell their own story. Across the years of investigation, the patterns repeat with an almost mechanical consistency near this formation. Drones that lose their signal mid-flight, batteries that drain too fast to explain, computers that corrupt their own files, surveillance systems that glitch at the precise moment something appears on the monitor. Each failure taken alone could be coincidence. Taken together, they form a pattern that investigators began to notice and then to map. So the rule of this place is stated early and plainly. Near this rock, things that should be impossible happen, and they happen on camera. By the 5th season of the investigation, the team had stopped asking whether the mesa was unusual and started asking what it was doing. That season produced one of the strangest experiments in the ranch's documented history, a test of the mesa itself as a conductor, or a passage. The plan was simple in principle. 2 teams, 2 positions. On one side of the mesa, in the east field, the place where an orb had been recorded entering the rock, a signal generator was set up. On the far side, at the north edge of an area the team called the Triangle, another team waited with receivers. The physicist Travis Taylor began transmitting a radio signal at 1.6 gigahertz, aimed so that it would have to pass through the mesa to reach the other side. Erik Bard was listening at the Triangle, watching his instruments. The signal arrived. It should not have. Solid rock, at that distance, at that frequency. The physicists said so themselves, in plain terms, before and after the experiment. There is no physical mechanism by which that transmission should have crossed the mesa. And yet Erik Bard's receiver showed the signal, clean and measurable, as if the stone had never been there at all. Then the anomalies began to multiply. On the same frequency, mirroring signals appeared, echoes of the transmission that seemed to answer it. They vanished at the moment a lidar drone entered the zone over the mesa's exit point. The failure was almost choreographed. First, the drone's real-time kinematic connection went red. Then it lost communication with its base station. Then it disappeared from Erik Bard's GPS tracking entirely. Like clockwork, the machine failed the instant it crossed into the wrong airspace. When the team reviewed the high-speed camera footage, the laboratory comm began to fracture. An orb, bright against the dark, moving through the sky. A UAP flying directly into the portal petroglyph near the exit zone. The same carving the ancient star map depicted. The same image believed to be a doorway. On another review, 4 objects moving in 4 directions at once, as if the air above the mesa had become a crossroads. And finally, 1 object tracing a long, patient S pattern over the triangle, deliberate, as though it were reading the experiment back to the people conducting it. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when evidence outruns expectation. The question that hung there is the question this episode keeps returning to. Was the signal traveling through the mesa, or was something inside the mesa answering it? There were old rumors about the Mesa before any of this. Even before the scientists arrived, the talk around the Uinta Basin included stories of an alien base hidden inside the high rock, of a cave entrance concealed somewhere on its slopes, of doors that opened for no one on schedule. For years, that was folklore. The investigation turned it into a question of geology, and geology refused to cooperate. At the site where the cave entrance was rumored to be, the team found something odd before they ever drilled: a pile of boulders. Not the natural scatter of a talus slope, a configuration that looked arranged. A demolition expert was called in to look at the pile, and he offered an unexpected opinion. The boulders looked as though a purposeful explosion had placed them there, or had deliberately concealed what lay beneath. No natural process, in his assessment, stacked rock like that. So they decided to drill. The decision was deliberate, cautious, documented at every step. And the drill met something the rock should not contain. From the side approach, the drill rod struck an obstruction and was deflected downward, then, suddenly, upward. From the top, the opposite, the rod bent the other way, skidding off whatever it had hit. The team mapped the deflections, compared the angles, and reached a conclusion by geometry alone. Whatever lay beneath the mesa was not a layer of rock. It was curved, oval, dome-shaped, a surface that offered no handhold to a drill bit, a shape that seemed designed to shed pressure from any direction. They tried again. The bit slid off the surface. They tried different angles, different equipment. Each time, the result was the same. The drill could not hold a hole. It would strike, deflect, and skate away, as if the obstruction beneath the stone were smooth and unyielding and utterly indifferent to their efforts. But the drilling did produce one harvest. In the spoils brought up from depth, the team found small fragments of metal, pieces that appeared to have been scraped from the obstacle itself by the drill's own teeth. They bagged them carefully, documented the recovery, and sent the fragments to the University of Utah for analysis. The lab report came back, and it is the kind of result that stops a conversation. The fragments contained elements strikingly similar to the materials NASA used to protect the space shuttle during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Not natural alloy, not a common industrial metal. A composition developed for one of the most extreme environments human engineering has ever faced. Found scraped from an object buried inside a mesa in Utah. There is a pause in any honest story at this point. Take it, let the meaning of that lab report settle before we go any deeper. The drilling campaign did not end with that first refusal. It resumed, season after season, and the drillers pushed deeper, toward a hard object encountered around 30 feet down, in later attempts, with the team working to reach it by new routes. The mesa, it turned out, would not keep its secret in one place. More fragments were recovered from depth. When the analysts examined them, the language in their reports grew careful, and that carefulness itself was telling. The material appeared deliberately produced, they said, not naturally formed. There were structures in it that did not match any known geological process, textures that suggested manufacture rather than accretion. The fragments were anomalous, a word the team used with the weight of people who had been burned by excitement before. And with the material came radiation. Gamma readings near the recovered fragments climbed to levels that changed the team's procedures. Instruments were recalibrated. Protocols were introduced. People who had been working casually near the recovery site began to observe distances, timings, exposures. Whatever the fragments were, they were not inert souvenirs. They carried something with them out of the ground. The theories, at this point, deserve to be laid out fairly, because honesty is the only currency this investigation has ever traded in. A buried meteorite, one school of thought. A large iron body that could explain the magnetic disturbances and the deflection of drill bits. A natural object mistaken for something built. A natural formation, another school. Some underground structure of rock and mineral that happened to mimic the properties of engineering. A trick of geology. And a third possibility, the one the ranch's own history raises. Debris associated with the incident known in local lore as Holy Cow, an event reported in 1994 near Homestead 2, involving crashes and lights, an account that remains unconfirmed and still disputed to this day. It is presented here as what it is, an open question, not an answer. The deeper fork in the road is this. If the Mesa is holding something, then the object is a prisoner of stone, buried so deep and so sealed that no drill has ever reached it whole. But if the Mesa is shielding something, if the rock itself is the defense, the way a hull shields what it protects, then the investigators have been standing on the outside of a shell, and the shell has been tolerating their curiosity without ever once opening. That is the honest position. No test has yet recovered the object whole. Every theory on this table remains a theory, but the investigation had already discovered that the Mesa's reach extended beyond the stone itself, into the living things around it. In the first season, a young cow was found dead on the ranch. It was not old, not sick, not injured in any way the ranchers could see. But the instruments told a different story. Radiation readings around the carcass spiked at levels unusual for the area, far above the natural background of that high desert ground. The veterinarian who examined the animal was surprised. The cause of death was determined to be a rapid onset pneumonia, a condition consistent, he said, with shock, or with an instant and overwhelming trauma. Something had killed the animal so quickly that its own body could not process what had happened to it. Then the team reviewed the surveillance footage from the pasture. High in the sky, a black, oval-shaped object was moving, faster than any conventional aircraft the investigators could account for. And just before the cow died, the footage seemed to show the animal looking skyward, as though it had sensed something approaching. The sequence of images does not prove a connection, but it documented something the team could not explain away. The strangest detail came months later. The carcass had been left where it lay, and when the team returned to it, they found it almost untouched. No scavengers, no birds, nothing. And it was decaying far more slowly than it should have. Whatever had happened to that animal, the ordinary processes of the landscape seemed unwilling to complete the work. This is where Bard's magnet test returns, because it is the one thread that ties the dead livestock to the failing electronics and the dizzy spells. The ranch's unusual electromagnetic field, measured, tested, reproduced, is the only explanation the investigation has ever found that connects all three. A field that can drain a battery, interrupt a signal, and unsettle a balance is a field that can do other things, to other bodies. The team members themselves have reported electrical sensations and electromagnetic spikes affecting them during work on the ranch. These are presented as reports, not settled fact, and the judgment is left to the audience. But the possibility they raise is sobering. The Mesa may be the source of a field that can injure, confuse, and physically disorient, and the team keeps going back anyway. That is what makes them credible. That is also what makes the risk real. If the instruments measured the Mesa's field, it was the cameras that captured its strangest behavior. In the fourth season, the team flew a helicopter along the face of the mesa, with GoPro cameras mounted on its skids, hoping to document the rock from an angle they had never held before. They got more than they expected, by accident. On the footage, a glowing orb appears beside the petroglyph and disappears directly into the mesa, into solid rock, at the very spot the ancient star map marks as a doorway. Moments later, an orb exits the mesa on the same plane, moving away through the air toward the triangle. In and out. The same rock that had refused a drill bit had apparently admitted something else entirely. It was a lucky catch, recorded by accident, and it changed the conversation. There is a second kind of encounter that season, quieter and stranger. A native drum circle gathered at the base of the mesa, performing a ceremony near the rock. During the ceremony, a heat anomaly appeared on the boulders above them, a warm spot in the thermal imagery where no source of warmth existed. The performers grew uncomfortable. Several described the sensation of being watched from within the rock itself. Whether the heat and the feeling were connected, no one could say. But the images recorded both. Later, reviewing footage from the same period, the team found two objects above the mesa, diving toward it, and vanishing, as if passing directly into the stone. Not flying over it, not skimming its edge, into it. And then there was the laser experiment at the triangle. The team projected a beam of light upward into the sky above the mesa, and on the night footage, an orb can be seen ascending alongside the beam, rising, pacing it, and vanishing a moment before contact, as though the light itself was something it would not touch. Brandon Fugal has asked the question on camera, in plain words, did we just record evidence of portals? It is a fair question, and the answer this story will give is the only honest one available. The evidence is on video. What the videos mean is a door we will not push open here. Some doors are better left, for now, exactly where they are. Through all of this, one man has watched. The command center at Skinwalker Ranch is not dramatic to look at. A room of monitors, feeds, energy detectors, signal analyzers. But it is the brain of the investigation, and Erik Bard sits at its center with a discipline that does not waver. Trust the instrument, doubt the excitement. When a reading is strange, he verifies it. When a story is exciting, he tests it. When the two disagree, he says so. In the third season, that discipline produced one of the most significant moments of the investigation. His wide-shot camera, an instrument pointed at the sky for no reason other than continuous observation, caught an orb ascending alongside a laser beam and vanishing just before contact. He did not shout, he did not speculate. He called Brandon and Travis to the room, and he showed them the footage. Whatever the object was, it had been on his monitor, measurable, real. There are quieter observations, too. He noticed a tree on the ranch with an unnatural circular hole in its canopy, a hole that appeared to have been punched through the foliage from above, and that he estimated to be roughly 30 years old. 30 years before his observation, a crash had been alleged at the ranch. The tree could not tell its own story, but it held a shape that matched one. His own equipment fails, like everyone else's. Even the watcher is not exempt from the place he watches. The same glitches that plague the drones and the computers have reached his hands, his screens, his instruments. If anything, that has deepened his credibility, because he has never pretended otherwise. And his public statements, across years as principal investigator, have been remarkably consistent. He has never claimed a final truth about the Mesa. He has said only that the phenomena are real, that they are measurable, and that they remain unexplained. 3 positions, held to with the patience of a man who has watched a decade of strange evidence and refused every easy conclusion. The human beat lands quietly. The Mesa is the one place on the property that has never given Erik Bard a straight answer, and he says so without drama. Not with frustration, not with fear, just with the flat honesty of a man who has asked the same question of the same rock for years and been answered, every time, with a deeper question. So what does the Mesa hide? It would be easier to answer if the evidence pointed in one direction. It does not. There is the anomalous electromagnetic field, measured and reproduced. There is the dome-shaped obstruction, mapped by geometry, deflecting every drill. There is the radio signal that crossed solid rock and was answered by something. There are the orbs, entering and leaving the Mesa on camera. There is the manufactured-looking metal, scraped from depth, whose analysis matches the materials built to survive the heat of re-entry. There is the radiation, climbing where the metal lay. And there is the dead cow, looking skyward, untouched by the landscape that should have reclaimed it. What is documented is real. Instruments, dates, footage, lab analyses, repeated failures. What is not documented is a single theory that covers all of it. The team itself has offered the honest candidates: a buried meteorite, a natural formation mistaken for structure, or debris connected to an incident that remains unconfirmed to this day. None of them fits every observation. That is the position, stated plainly, without apology, and the larger implication deserves to stand quietly, because it is the most unsettling thing this story has found. If the Mesa does contain something made, something built rather than formed, then the questions stop being about one ranch. They become questions about physics, about history, about the traditions of the Uinta Basin that warned of this place long before anyone brought a drill to its slopes. The old knowledge spoke of mesas as doors. The instruments now point at one mesa and say the same thing, in a language the old knowledge never had. So the final question is asked softly, because it deserves a soft answer. Would Erik Bard call what the Mesa hides terrifying, or would he simply say that we are not meant to settle it yet? He has never used the word. He is not the kind of man who does. But he has said, in his measured voice, that the Mesa has not yet told anyone what it is. The last image is the Mesa at night, under surveillance. A floodlight pooling against the rock face. The petroglyph, older than every theory, holding its place in the stone. The cameras watching, the way they always watch. And the Mesa keeping its own counsel, the way it always has. Perhaps that is the terror the title promises. Not a creature, not a spacecraft. The evidence is real, and the explanation is absent. A patient scientist stands before a rock that has answered every measurement with a deeper question, and the investigation, like the mystery, remains open.